European knight versus samurai, the truth history reveals. In 1600, as Europe perfected the deadly art of armored combat, Japan's samurai stood at the peak of centuries-old sword mastery. Two worlds, two warrior traditions. Both believed they had created the ultimate fighter. But history tells a more complex truth. To understand who was superior, we must first understand the battlefield each warrior was born into. Because neither the European knight nor the samurai fought in a vacuum. They were products of their environment. The European warrior tradition. By the late Middle Ages, around the 14th to 15th centuries, European knights had evolved into heavily armored warriors. Plate armor was not clumsy. It was highly engineered. A full suit of armor could weigh around 20 to 25 kilograms, but it was evenly distributed. A trained knight could run, grapple, and even vault onto a horse. Weapons evolved to match this armor. The longsword became the defining weapon of Europe. Not just for slashing, but for thrusting into weak points. Historical manuals, such as those by Johannes Lichtenauer and later Fiore de Liberi, early 1400s, show that European sword fighting was highly technical. It included wrestling techniques, joint locks, half-swording, gripping the blade for precision thrusts. This was not brute force, it was a system. European combat emphasized adaptability. Knights trained to fight, on foot, on horseback, in armor, without armor. Battlefields were chaotic, warriors needed flexibility. The samurai way of combat. Meanwhile, in Japan, the samurai developed a very different system. By the Sengoku period, 1467 to 1615, Japan was in constant civil war. Samurai were not just swordsmen, they were archers, spearmen, and cavalry warriors. In fact, the bow, the yumi, was their primary weapon for centuries. The iconic katana became dominant later. The katana was designed for speed and precision. It was lighter than most European swords, and razor-sharp. Japanese swordsmanship schools, such as Kashima Shinto-ryu and Ito-ryu, emphasized timing, distance, mai, one decisive strike. Unlike European manuals, many Japanese traditions were transmitted orally or through kata, structured forms. Combat philosophy was deeply tied to discipline and mindset. By the Edo period, 1603–1868, samurai combat became more ritualized. Duels replaced battlefield chaos. Famous duels, like that of Miyamoto Musashi in 1612, highlight this shift. Musashi defeated Sasaki Kojiro using strategy, timing, and psychological advantage, not just technique. Armor versus armor, a critical difference. One of the biggest differences between these warriors was armor. European plate armor was extremely resistant to cuts. A sword slash would often do nothing. This forced European fighters to thrust into joints, use blunt force, grapple, and control. In contrast, samurai armor, called o-yoroi or later tosei gusoku, was lighter and more flexible. It was effective against arrows and light blades, but less resistant to heavy thrusting weapons. This difference shaped combat styles. European combat became close range, grappling heavy, tactical against armor. Samurai combat emphasized speed, precision, clean strikes. The myth of the katana versus the reality of steel. Modern media often portrays the katana as superior, but historically, both European and Japanese swords were highly advanced. European steelmaking, especially in cities like Solingen, Germany, produced blades of exceptional quality. Likewise, Japanese swordsmiths developed folding techniques to deal with impurities in local iron. Both traditions solved different problems. Neither was universally better. Did they ever meet? Here's the critical question. Did European knights and samurai ever fight? The answer is not directly, but there was contact. In the 16th century, Portuguese traders arrived in Japan, 1543. They introduced firearms. The Japanese quickly adopted them. At the Battle of Nagashino in 1575, Oda Nobunaga used matchlock guns to devastating effect. This changed warfare completely. Meanwhile, Europe was already transitioning into gunpowder warfare. By the 17th century, both traditions were becoming obsolete on the battlefield. Who would win, samurai or knight? Real history answer. Who was superior? So who would win, a knight or a samurai? History does not give us a direct answer, because they were never meant to fight each other. A European knight in full armor would be extremely difficult for a katana to penetrate. A samurai, faster and more agile, might exploit openings. But outcomes would depend on armor, weapons, environment, training context. Each system was optimized for its own battlefield, and within those contexts, both were highly effective. The truth is simple. There was no superior warrior, only warriors shaped by their world. And when gunpowder arrived, both the knight and the samurai faded into history, not defeated by each other, but by the future itself.